I'm Michelle. I'm 42 years old. I've walked a journey with addiction for the last almost 20 years. I've been in recovery centres in treatment and working treatment for 11 years. I came to Hope Again last year as a counsellor. Yeah, they really care. You know, they care about you as an individual. I think that the way the staff and Frikkie live is absolute testimony of God's goodness. So there's a lot of difference. You know, people get treated with love and with care, and I think you don't get looked on as an addict, you know. And the fact that you can overcome this with Jesus is highly publicized at Hope Again Recovery Centre. If I look back at my life, I think it's so easy to look back and feel such intense regret and anger at myself for the mistakes I've made, you know. But if I change my perception and think that, you know, God sees failure as preparation for success, then I realize that I've been in training, you know, and there's a purpose for my pain. I was born in Cape Town. My dad was a pilot for the Air Force. My mom worked in a bank at that time. When I was 4, my father tragically passed away in a mid-air collision. It was my sister and I that were left behind, and my young mother. She got remarried quite soon after my father passed away to my stepdad. He's an extremely good man, although myself and him had an incredibly fractious relationship throughout the years. But despite that, he's one of the people that have been a constant support in my life. We were blessed with another brother and a sister from their marriage. You know, we grew up in a pretty middle-class family. You know, most of my years were spent in Mpumalanga. I went to school there, matriculated in White River. I did quite well academically at school. I had a lot of good friends. I wasn't introduced to any, you know, bad behavior. We were quite good. I think a lot of my good behavior as such was a fear for my father. He was incredibly strict. And I resented him a lot for that for many years. After school, I studied in Bloemfontein, and it was difficult for me because after my matric year, we relocated to the Free State, and I had to go and study in Bloemfontein, brand new city. I didn't know anybody. So the first half of that year was very difficult for me. I didn't adjust well. But thereafter it was okay, and when I completed my studies, I went to work in Johannesburg. I ended up working in the insurance industry for brokers, and I did really well. I was headhunted a couple of times in my career, and throughout my 20s I really excelled working in the insurance industry. It was during this time, I was working for a broker in Rivonia, when I met a man. He was quite a bit older than me. And it was really my first real grown-up relationship, if I can put it that way. He introduced me to a different world. I was so used to a protected environment that I grew up in. We moved in together, and it was during those months that it became evident that he had occasional strange behavior. And I was so naive at that stage, I didn't really, think too much about it. But it came out that he was he was an occasional cocaine user. Initially, when I found out, I was quite disgusted, to the point where I considered, walking away from the relationship. But stupidly in love at that stage, I decided to stay. And it was a couple of months after that he actually introduced me to cocaine one night. And little did I know that was the night that my whole life changed. That would cost me many, many years of tears and heartache, as well as my family. The cocaine became recreational use every now and again, but it soon became quite serious for me. We got married at Gallagher Estates, and when we got married, it was myself and him, and he had a couple of grams of cocaine in his pocket. And the significance of that was that there was actually 3 of us getting married. And when I think back on my life, I realized that my love for cocaine at that stage superseded my relationship with him, and I actually got married to cocaine that day, my life started to spiral out of control. I tried to commit suicide a number of times. Obviously, my career started to be negatively influenced. All I wanted to do was use cocaine and party, whereas that was never me before, I was really driven previously. There was one incident one night where I was really high and they were trying to talk me down, and I decided to jump out of a window, and I shattered my bones in my leg to such an extent that I had to have 17 operations after that. It took 2 years to heal. My leg was close to amputation. But that was not enough to stop me. I continued. My parents, Shan, they did their best. There were many times where I'd go to their house and they tried to help me, and my dad would get me into exercise and healthy living, but the minute I got a chance, I would go back to cocaine. Or then I started to cross-addict to alcohol, and obviously with my leg, the doctors gave me a lot of morphine and pethidine and pain medication, so that also then became an addiction. I used to fake that my leg was sore and go to every emergency room just to get a pethidine shot. That went on for about 5 years. The year I turned 30, that was 2009. My parents asked me to join a long-term treatment program. This treatment center was in the Karoo. It's one of the toughest rehab centers in South Africa. It's run extremely military style. I remember going there March 2009 and being shocked at the surroundings. I was like a little bird thrown out of the nest. I was totally out of my comfort zone. It was horrific, tough. And I did my year program there, and I swore never ever to go back to that place. Little did I know that I'd end up spending 7.5 years there, going back, working as staff in that treatment center. I was served divorce papers in my first year there, and that was also very tough. After I'd finished my first year, end of February 2010, I went, my parents fetched me, things looked good. I had a lot of opportunities, and because my mindset had not shifted at all, I had not made the decision that I wanted to stop using. It was a week out of a year program, and I relapsed again. My parents were furious, obviously. My family was so disappointed. And I made the decision to go back to the same treatment center where I stayed for a period of time again. And that's where I met Stephen, my best friend, the love of my life. And to become the father of my children and my husband. We left the treatment center together and we went to Johannesburg where we started a life. We got married. We had our first baby, a daughter named Mackenzie, in 2012. Mackenzie was 3 months old when Stephen and I relapsed, and he was also a cocaine user, but somebody had introduced him to heroin. So when we relapsed on cocaine, he said, let's try heroin to come down. So we did, and heroin slowly superseded cocaine, and to the extent that 3 months down the lane, when Mackenzie turned 6 months old, Stephen his heartbeat was 6 beats per minute. He was almost overdosing. I was completely out of it. My parents and his parents intercepted it in extremely devastating, situation. We were taken back to the same treatment center again. Mackenzie went to my parents. And yes, then, slowly, that was the most devastating time because leave my baby behind, and I didn't see her for 6 months. At that stage, Stephen and I then went to go and serve the director and founder of the institution, which was very tough. He is an incredibly difficult man, very hard taskmaster. And there you don't just get told off quickly, you get rebuked for 2 hours, on how bad you are and what a bad person you are, and you're just a drug addict, you're really nothing. We ended up staying there for close to 3 years. After our program finished, we worked there, and we ended up running the secondary phase of the program, which was actually good because we had our own home. Mackenzie stayed with us, and things went well. But the longing for normality, I think, eventually got a hold of us, and we started making plans to leave, to go and work on the outside. A devastating event happened when we were back. One of the girls that was in the house with us relapsed, and she ran away, and she overdosed 2 days later. We kind of blamed ourselves for it because we saw it and we did speak up about it, but it was kind of ignored. That had a big impact on us. And it was soon after that our family said, no, come home. And I fell pregnant then with our second daughter, Bentley. That was 2016. So we went to go live on the South Coast. Stephen's parents had businesses there, and we lived with his parents. His parents were fantastic in helping us getting back on our feet again. We gave birth to Bentley in November 2016. Stephen was doing very well. I battled with the fact of having two kids. I battled with the fact that there's almost 5 years difference between Mackenzie and Bentley. I battled because she got all our attention. Now I had a new baby, and I felt like such a useless mother because I battled to combine. I did another stint in rehab in 2018 for 6 months for alcohol. It was in January 2019, just after Mackenzie had started grade 1, that I can't even tell you the reason Stephen and I relapsed. And we relapsed on meth. The Saturday, we were supposed to take Mackenzie to the doctor in Durban. And we drove through the morning, and Stephen said, let's get a heroin in Durban, because he had a contact in Durban. And I said, okay. And we got heroin, and we used that evening. And on Sunday morning, I woke, and Stephen was dead next to me of an overdose in front of me, and the girls were there. And that's 27th of January 2019 is the day my whole life changed. Everything as I knew it changed. My children were taken away. Stephen was dead. I was close to overdosing myself. I was taken to high care, and from then 2 or 3 days after to a treatment center just outside Alberton. If I say it was the toughest time of my life, I don't think that those words actually encompass what it was. I planned every day in my mind how to kill myself. I absolutely had no will to live. Absolutely no will to live. There was no communication with my children. There was no communication really with anybody. I remember it being 7 months because it was the 1st of September, and I remember going down on my knees in the bathroom and just crying out to the Lord that, I can't do this anymore. Give me some hope, give me some hope. And nothing tangible came, but it was the peace that came within me that day. And it was as if that day I started to kind of rebuild myself, Not that the pain went away, but it just became kind of easier to live with. I started studying towards being an addiction counselor, which also gave me a purpose in life again. And it was about 2 years after that I came to work at Hope Again Recovery Centre. It was amazing working here. It's a treatment centre like no other. The peace and the people that work here are absolutely amazing. I met a guy in January here at the treatment centre. Despite numerous warnings, we started to see each other, and things got quite serious quite fast. And in March, my birthday, we went away, and he asked me to marry him. And on the day we were supposed to get married, the 14th of March, he decided that he was going to go and smoke crack and disappear. And I think in that moment, the utter desperation I felt, all the feelings of trauma that I felt with regards to Stephen dying, and it was left untreated, the kids that the relationship had not been restored, the pain in that moment was unbearable. I think there was no rational thinking. Obviously, it was just complete emotion that overtook. And in that moment, I decided that there is no ways that I can actually live another day. Not one, not a chance. I went into a room in the guest house and I closed the doors. I took handfuls of tablets and I climbed into bed, and I knew that was it. I woke up though 5 or 6 days later in the ICU. They'd found me. My body had gone into severe fits. My face was cut from slamming against the wall. It looked like I'd been in a serious car accident. I spent about 2 weeks in hospital. After that, the guy that I was supposed to marry, he continued using. And then he started to communicate with me again. And it was at this stage that I said, okay, come and fetch me, we'll try again. So we came to fetch me, went to get a place in Johannesburg, and I got him clean. He was clean, we were both clean. I was so petrified of relapsing, and I was so petrified of him relapsing again, because that's the last thing I wanted, that I was almost too paranoid about it. I was obsessive about it. It was about 3 weeks down the line. It was a Monday night, and we had an argument, and he decided to go and buy crack. It was a Monday night, and he decided to go and get crack. To the extent where I was begging him not to. He said he'd cancelled the order, but about half an hour later, the guy was at the gate delivering his crack. He came into the room and threw it on the bed and said, well, there we go. Now talk me out of it. So I decided, okay, this is like, I need to motivate here big time. So I started to motivate about the plans we had for the future, you know, and why it wasn't a good idea, because he'd also walked a very long road with addiction. And he said, okay, the only way that he's not going to use is if I lock him in the bathroom. So I said, okay, you know, I thought it was a little bit funny, but, you know, I was desperate at the time. And normally I have a very strong personality, and he was so overbearing that I was so scared in that moment. He was, I locked him in the bathroom as he asked, and it was about 2 minutes after that I heard the lighter go, and I asked him, are you okay? And as I opened the door, it was like a different person standing there. His eyes were black, and he was like, you know, paranoid and looking over, and yeah, that was him. He smoked the Monday night, Tuesday. The Wednesday morning, we were sleeping. It was about early Wednesday morning, and I heard like a funny noise next to me. And I turned around and I shook him, and he wouldn't wake up. So I started to slap him and threw water on him, and he woke up. He came back, and I said, he's like, what's going on? What's going on? And I said, you're making funny noises, like you're scaring me. And he said, I'm fine. So I went to go and lay behind him, put his head on my chest, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up a couple of hours later, tried to wake him up, he was dead. I had placed so much hope, wrongly so, in this guy for a new future, you know. We had planned so many things to do together that I couldn't believe that this was happening to me again. It was a horrific day. I had to phone his family. My sister came, and 2 nights after that event that I relapsed, a message came through on the cell phone, on his cell phone, from the dealer saying that he's got good stuff. And in that moment, I said, what do you have, you know? And I ordered. The Thursday, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Debbie from Hope Again Recovery, my sister, had been in contact with Frikkie and Debbie and said, please, she thinks Michelle's busy dying. They came to fetch me on the Monday, and if she had not fetched me that day, I would have died, because as we arrived here, I started overdosing, and they had to rush me to hospital. It was in hospital that I had to decide. And that's when I realized I'm at a crossroads. Now I can either go and lie down and stop fighting, or can stand up again and fight. And you know, throughout my years of addiction, and especially being in the treatment center that I was for so long, where it was basically just military style, working the whole day and then church, I had such a deep desire to acquire knowledge about addiction. So I made it kind of like my life's goal to learn so much about addiction, and I did. But you know that despite all my knowledge on addiction, I still relapsed, and I still came close to death, you know. And that's when I realized that despite everything I know about addiction, it was missing one element, and that was a surrendered life to Christ. It was in that moment that I decided, okay, this is it. I've reached that utter place of complete desperation. There's nothing more to lose. God, you take it, and you just take it, because I can't anymore. And I can't tell you that the growth that had happened after I had made that decision was phenomenal. You know, it's like the head knowledge that I knew and everything that I knew throughout the years finally dropped, and everything that Christ is and did for us dropped into my soul, you know, and that's where I live from now. You know, God could not use me, the woman I was at 25, but through everything He has built my characters to such a place as today, and He still will. to use me for his kingdom purposes. My passion is to be a counselor. My passion is to help girls, to teach them through the hardships that I've been through, the loss that I've experienced. You know, you'd think that losing your children or losing your husband will never happen to me, but it did. And then subsequently losing somebody else to drugs. You know, never in my life did I imagine that it would happen to me, but it did. So that's my story.